Is your phone your second brain? I mean, think about it. We all know that feeling, right? That little pang of panic when your phone battery dies. But is it just about missing a few texts? Or is it something deeper? Like we're afraid of losing an actual part of ourselves? That's what we're digging into today. Have our phones really become our second brains? So check this out. There's this psychologist, Adrian Ward. He'd been driving around Austin, Texas for 9 years. He knew the place like the back of his hand. But then one day, his phone dies, no Apple Maps. And all of a sudden, he's completely lost. Can't even find his way to a close friend's house. That feeling, being totally lost in a place you know, that's a perfect way to kick things off. It just makes you wonder, how much of our brain have we handed over to our devices? And look, this isn't just some random feeling. It's a real widespread anxiety. So much so that in 2023, Oxford actually named brain rot its word of the year. You've probably heard the term. It's this fear that by constantly reaching for our phones for everything, we're just letting our brains get lazy, letting those mental muscles waste away. But the big question is that what's really going on? Okay, so let's really get into it. This whole brain rot fear, what's it all about? Well, it's not just about forgetting like who starred in some movie from the 90s. It goes deeper. It's this worry that we're outsourcing our intelligence itself. Trading in our ability to think critically for the quick, easy answer from a search bar. Are we just becoming mentally lazy? Dependent? Maybe. Not as sharp as we once were? But here's the kicker, and this is where it gets really interesting. Your brain has always been doing this. Yeah, for real. Scientists have a name for it, cognitive offloading. It's just a fancy way of saying we use tools to lighten the load on our brain. I mean, think about it. Writing down a grocery list, setting a reminder on your calendar, using a calculator. That's all cognitive offloading. Your brain is basically just trying to be as efficient as possible by creating these little external memory banks. Which, leads us to a really important question. Is this constant offloading to Google a bug, a glitch in our modern lives, a sign of decay? Or is it actually a feature, a super smart adaptive strategy our brains have come up with to handle the insane amount of information we're flooded with every day? And you can see the shift right here. It used to be all about internal memory, right? You had to actually remember the fact itself. But now we're often operating on something called transactive memory. You might have heard of it as the Google effect. Your brain isn't worried about remembering that the capital of Madagascar is Antananarivo. Nope. It's focused on remembering how to find that fact. It remembers the path. Oh, I'll just Google it. And this whole idea of transactive memory, it's not some newfangled internet thing. It was actually thought up back in the 80s to explain how people in groups, like couples or teams, split up the job of remembering stuff. Like one person remembers all the family birthdays and the other remembers when the bills are due. The only thing that's really changed now is who our partner is. It's not just another person anymore. It's the entire internet. What's really wild is that this doesn't affect everyone the same way. When you look at the research, some pretty interesting patterns pop up. For example, it seems like people in North America are more likely to just reach for Google. The effect is also way stronger when we're on our phones, which makes sense, right? They're always with us, like a little external brain in our pocket. And here's a twist. Older adults seem to be less susceptible, maybe because their brains were wired to remember things long before a search engine was an option. Okay, so if our brains are going to do this cognitive offloading thing anyway, what if we just leaned into it? Instead of accidentally forgetting stuff, what if we started offloading things on purpose, strategically? Well, that's the whole concept behind this really popular idea called building a second brain. And one of the most well-known ways to do this is the PARA method from a guy named Tiago Forte. It's a super simple but powerful way to organize your digital life so you can actually use the information. It breaks down into 4 categories: projects, stuff with a deadline; areas, your long-term responsibilities like health or finances; resources, all the topics you're interested in; and finally, archives, where you put everything that's finished. It's basically a smart filing cabinet for your brain. This PARA system fits inside a really neat 4-step workflow called CODE. First, you capture interesting ideas. Then you organize them using PARA. After that, you distill them down to their core essence. And the final step is to express yourself, to actually use that knowledge to create something. It's all about turning you from just a consumer of information into a creator. Okay, but let's be real for a second. This all sounds great, but there has to be a downside, right? This efficiency, it comes at a price. We have to ask, what are the real risks of relying so heavily on our digital brains? We're not just talking about forgetting random facts here. We could be talking about losing actual fundamental skills.
And the research shows some pretty clear dangers. Remember the psychologist Adrian Word getting lost in his own city? Well, studies actually back that up. People who use GPS all the time get worse at navigating on their own. We can also fall into what's called cognitive passivity. That's when you pull out a calculator for simple math. Then there's this problem of inflated confidence, where we feel like we know something just because the answer is a quick search away. And now, with AI, there's a whole new danger, accidentally believing and remembering a completely fake but very convincing hallucination. Adrian Ward, the psychologist we started with, he really nails it here. He says we access all this outside information so easily, so seamlessly, that it starts to feel like it's our own knowledge, stored right in our heads. You know that feeling of shock when you realize you can't remember something without your phone? Yeah, that's the moment the illusion breaks.
So where does all this leave us? Well, it pushes us towards a much bigger, almost philosophical question. If our memories, our ideas, our plans are all living on our devices, then maybe our whole idea of what a mind is just too small. Maybe we need to start rethinking where our mind stops and the rest of the world begins. There's actually a name for this idea, the extended mind thesis. It comes from these two philosophers, Andy Clark and David Chalmers. And their argument is pretty mind-bending. They say that if a tool, whether it's an old-school notebook or your new smartphone, is functionally part of your memory, then it's not just a tool. It is, quite literally, a part of your mind. So your mind isn't just stuck inside your skull. It actually extends out into your environment. And get this idea isn't even new. We're talking way back in 1877. This guy, Ernst Kopp, was talking about organ projection, the idea that our tools are just extensions of our bodies. An axe is basically an external arm, right? A camera lens is an external eye. If you think about it that way, the internet is just the next logical step. It's the extension of our own neural network. And as we look to the future, this is only going to get more intense. Just try to imagine it. By 2040, we could have brain-computer interfaces that anyone can buy. Fast forward to 2050, and this deep connection between our minds and machines could define a whole new way of life. Having our brains connected to the cloud could just be normal. So, this is the real takeaway. We're moving way beyond a simple fear of brain rot. This is forcing us to ask some really profound questions about who we are. This isn't just about how we remember facts anymore. This is about our identity. If all your memories, your ideas, your plans, the very things that make you you, are stored on some server halfway across the world, then where does the tool end and where do you begin?